inside of me, and sometimes that leads to my demise in certain scenarios, but I just can't help it. I don't know what that is psychologically, but I just have to let out whatever is on my mind or whatever's in my emotions. And so it lets out some of the steam inside of me that's building up. So that's just how I feel. Anyway, just got an alert saying there's a white Pomeranian mix, a loose dog, in the neighborhood. So I'm, as I've mentioned, I'm going on tour soon, and it's been something that I've been going 2 years now, been pushing back, and this was supposed to go on in 2020, and a couple weeks before I was supposed to start is when the pandemic hit. So I'm still going, but I have to be honest, it's been very difficult for me to get ready for this tour and to be, get into it. It's not to say that I'm going to cancel it or anything. I'm still going through with it, but it's just, I think just other factors of my life have affected my motivation and energy to put into touring and even music and shows and all that. I've haven't been writing or anything, and that happens in phases. I did the Christmas tour. It was a wonderful tour to do. It was also a very difficult tour for me to do. Christmas tours have always been my favorite ones to do, but I just, for some reason, something that I always do, and I've always done, like doing shows, suddenly became very hard for me and very draining and exhausting emotionally to do. And so going into this next tour, it's just been hard for me to grasp how I'm going to, do this and do it well. But I no longer like to, pretend like everything's fine and I'm great and all that if I'm not feeling that way. So I just wanted to be real. And I feel like, we live in a time where it's okay to do that. You don't have to put on a fake mask. I don't think people like it when you're fake anyway. So, at least not anymore. They don't like to just see a false impression of reality. So, I'm sure it's had to do with this last year, with figuring out everything coming out and trying to understand what that means for me and the changes and adjustments it's made into my life. Yeah. But I'm sure that's probably the number one thing, and how it's affected my view on things, how it's affected my beliefs. I grown up in a religion that I've always felt very strong towards, being a Latter-day Saint, aka Mormon. And I always have been very faithful to it, very strongly bound, like just sticking with it and faithful to the end with it all. And I think it's been very difficult knowing that they've adjusted their views over the last few years about how to look at LGBT people. You know, they've stated things like, you know, it's okay to feel attracted to the same sex. But they've also said, well, just don't act on it. But I think they've even loosened that a little bit. It's like, well, don't go too far with it. You know, it's adjusted little by little. And I think just in my position, I feel like another thing my church has always taught is marriage is everything. But clearly, you know, marriage between a man and a woman, that's the way that it's ordained by God. That's how it's taught. Like, this is God's whole plan. It's not just to make societies, it has to do with this, but not only does it have to do with making societies grow and having your posterity carry on, but in my church, it's like an eternal perspective. Like, after this life, marriage is like if you choose to get married in the temple, you're with them for time and all eternity, even after death, which is a beautiful thought if you love that person, and that you can continue growing and progressing like on an eternal journey together. And that's what I wanted. I always, I grew up believing that. I grew up defending it because I was like, this is what God has for me. This is what I believe, and I'm gonna get married and have kids and have a wife and get married in the temple, and I'm gonna live happily ever after. Well, I've tried to make that work a lot of times, and it's been very difficult, clearly, because my sexuality, you know, did not leave me with the inclination to have those desires of not just marrying a woman, but having a family with her. And I think in our culture today, it's a big deal to be physically, not just physically, but sexually attracted to someone, you know, feeling that connection, that chemistry with someone, and not just that, oh, they're good people, and so just get together and make things work. You know, that we really want this romantic, electrifying experience that is added to that. And when it came to those aspects of a relationship, I just couldn't provide them. Not to a woman. And I've tried several times. You can ask. I guess you can ask, but I mean, if people know my exes, they can ask. And it's something that's just expected. Like, you want that chemistry. And if you can't provide it, the person feels like, what's wrong? What's wrong with me? What have I done? It's like, you haven't done anything. It's just, other than like accept to be in a relationship with me, who is not able to give you what you are hoping to get, this chemistry and this connection that's not just friendly and nice, like, but romantic. Apologize for my pauses sometimes. So I thought, well, I can overcome the lack of those feelings as well, and I can make it work. But there's this really strange emotion that comes up each time I would try and do that. And this guilt, this shame, this like, I'm not good enough. I can't make this work. There's something wrong. I don't even know how to explain it. It's just, you start feeling bitter. You start feeling bitter towards the girl, in my case, or I just didn't even want to see them anymore. I was afraid to talk to them because I knew that they thought this connection was being built. And I felt like, oh, I'm a really good, like, not pretender, but just playing the part. Like, I'm in this show, like in this play, I'm playing a part because I thought that's the part I'm supposed to play. Like, be the man who finds the girl, who you court, and then you eventually think of how you're going to get married and have children and live happily ever after and, and all these things. And I thought like I was playing the part, but the problem was I kept feeling this, like I was an imposter, because I would see that the way whoever I was dating was reacting and feeling like this is who I am. And I'm like, did they not realize I'm not that? I'm just playing the part because I'm supposed to. But they felt like the part I was playing was genuine and that there was this certain kind of connection that was romantically going on, like almost like a fairy tale. And I looked at it as more like a business relationship. Like, this is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to get married. But they wanted more of a personable connection in addition to that. And that always worried me because I'm like, I can't provide that. I tried many times. I'm 31 years old now. I tried it many times and I realized I don't want to play this part for my whole life, because even in the short amount of time I'm playing this part, it is driving me crazy. I'm feeling like I'm going nuts because I don't feel that connection that they think I'm feeling. And if they want that connection for the rest of their life, I can't give it to them. And I thought if I played the part, it would naturally come, because that's what I was taught a lot of times from different people or whatever. And it's not the case. You literally start going insane because I'm like, you are pretending to be something you're not, but it's supposed to be real life. It's like I was on a reality TV show. And I didn't want to be in that reality TV show anymore. Pretending to be a part that I'm supposed to be in real life for the rest of my life, and I could never turn it off. Or if I did, then I was disappointing the person because they're like, you're not who I thought you were. And as far as a lack of connection. So as I came to that conclusion and just realized, you know what, I think it's because I am attracted to men. That was really hard for me to accept because religiously, I was already doing the right thing because I already knew I was attracted to guys. But I thought, well, I'm attracted enough to women that I can make this work. But, you know, in my religion, it's okay to be attracted to men, just still marry a woman. Because that's the right thing to do. That's the eternal perspective. Like, that's what's going to really make you happy. If you acknowledge that you're attracted to men and do anything about it, you're going to suffer. You're going to be sad. You're going to lose this light in you. So that's why I just kept trying to make it work, because I thought this is what's really going to make me happy. When I started getting so depressed to a point where I was like, life's not even worth living anymore. I'd rather not live than try to live in a way that I'm pretending just to make everyone else think I look happy. I felt like that was very insincere and it was not honest. And I'd seen other examples of people trying to do that, and I didn't like how it looked. I didn't like the result. I didn't like just having to tolerate life until it ends. I feel like we're here to enjoy this life, and of course to struggle and wrestle and grow, but I think you shouldn't just tolerate it, because I didn't think I could do that for very long. So that's why I decided to come out and realized I needed to. Because up until, it was something I never acted on. I never looked at guys and thought, I want them. I never imagined anything. I never looked at anything to even stir up those feelings. I was very committed to just focusing on getting married to a woman and living my beliefs. But I felt a real contradiction in if God loved me, and this is what he wants me to do to be happy. I despised myself so much for trying to do what I considered was the right thing of, marrying a woman and dating and doing all those things. It caused me to despise myself so much for several years, to a point where I couldn't take it anymore. And I realized I had to change something if I wanted. I had to change something, because clearly trying the same thing over and over was causing me to go insane. And if I kept doing that, it probably wasn't going to turn out very well. And I had to change something if I wanted to look at myself in a better light, which was scary, because I thought there's no way I can accept that I'm into guys, and that could even be a route to take. There's no way I can accept that and be happy and be okay with myself, be okay with God, be okay, because God's always been very important to me. And so I was like, that's the last option I want to take. But it literally became the last option for me at a certain point. And I guess the other way I've looked at it, it's like, well, maybe it's better, because in my church they talk about, well, this is just if you're attracted to the same sex, it's a challenge you're given, it's a temptation, and after this life you won't have that anymore. So that's why you need to fight for this life. Fight through it, don't give in to it, because then you will be rewarded afterwards. Maybe you won't be the temptation of same-sex attraction is no longer there. And that makes it feel like, well, what's worse? For me to pretend for the rest of my life that I don't have that, and just to look like I'm happy with someone that causes all this confusion and disconnect and bitterness and even anger and hatred. I don't know why it happens, but you just feel this hatred for yourself and for the person you're with, because you're pretending. And it literally drove me crazy. So is that better? Because you feel like you have a sense that you're going to also hurt the person you're with, because you're not able to give them what they're hoping you can give them emotionally that they want in a relationship, that they always saw for themselves to be happy with someone, or the ulterior one is to give into those emotions, which in a certain point, if you're religious, you're like, that's hell. I'm basically choosing hell. I'm choosing damnation. But you feel it just like you can't keep it down anymore. You've been pushing it down all your life, and for some reason it gets to a certain point where you just can't. It's building so much. And so at that point you think, what would God prefer? Me to live a sinful life? Okay, that's how I looked at it. Living a gay life in a gay relationship, letting myself love someone romantically that's the same sex as me. Is that better than not being here and not existing? What's worse? Because probably ending my life is also bad. But what's worse? And you start playing with those ideas, which one's worse? And you start thinking, maybe ending my life doesn't sound so bad. That way I don't have to lie and pretend to be with someone and lie to them. But then I won't get to have posterity, and I'll miss out on a lot of things, and I won't be here for my family or whatever. But if I've already tried that several times and it hasn't worked, then I'm a failure. And if I stick around, I'm going to give that temptation's going to be ever before me, and that's wrong. And I feel like I'm about to give in to accepting that that's how I am. So maybe it's better for me to end the sinful person, to end the sin, than to let it grow and destroy me, because maybe if I die, I have a better chance of having salvation than if I were to live gay. And it's this wrestle that goes on in your head, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And unfortunately, it's a very tempting idea. So then that's a whole other story. Then the next chapter, I'm like, okay, then what if God wants me to stick around even if I'm gay or LGBT? Which is something I never thought was okay before. Because I always thought that would be letting everyone down, disappointing everyone, well, especially God, my future kids. It's so hard when it's programmed in your mind to believe that, and do anything you can to avoid that. But then you think, well, what if he is okay with me not being perfect, and even if I'm sinful, if I stick around, maybe there's something I can do to make up for my sin of being into guys. And it's just where one moment I realized if God is really there, because there was a moment where I had to just disconnect myself from God, because the idea that he was there and I was disappointing him by just I wasn't entertaining any desire for men. I was just entertaining the fact that I would allow myself to desire men and to possibly be in a relationship with them. But I wasn't doing any of it yet. lost my train of thought. I had to disconnect myself from God because the thought of him being so disappointed in me when I've tried all my life to please him, and then to just give in and give up to the thing I thought he was telling me to avoid at all cost. I felt like I was a failure. I lost. And I couldn't face the idea of a God, and I felt like to stay sane, if I were going to entertain that thought of, well, maybe you could be okay being gay or bisexual, LGBT. Even being bisexual, regardless, being in same-sex relationships, like allowing myself to care for another man romantically is what I refer to. So many people think being gay is all you want is to have physical, sexual relations and give in to those burning desires of lusting. It's like, no. It is the same way a heterosexual person would want to fall in love with them. Is it all about, are you thinking only about sex when you want to marry someone and share your life with someone? No. You want to connect with them on an emotional level. You want to share goals with them. You just want to go and do things together and, go out to eat or make breakfast or lunch or watch a movie or go on a walk together. There's so many other aspects to wanting to be in a gay relationship than just a sexual aspect, which is like, for me, is like down here on the bottom of the totem pole of why I would want to be in a same-sex relationship. It's that connection that I had to pretend I could offer to the girls I was with before that I wasn't really feeling. So I had to block that because in my brain, it was like, no, God would never accept this about me. And I would basically be turning my back on him. I'd be denying the Spirit. I'd be denying God by accepting this temptation of being into men. And I just couldn't deal with that. I was just like, you know what? Then I'm just going to block out this idea of God because it makes me feel so ashamed, which leads you down into that spiral of you're better off not being alive than disappointing God in such a horrible way. So until one day I was, I just was still praying and prayed to God, and I said, God, if you're there, please just take this away from me. If it's something if there really is a plan for me, aka if there's really a plan for me to marry a woman and have a family and be happily ever after, please take this from me. Because this is not what you want. I don't want it. Why do I have this still? Why am I still into guys when I don't want to be? And I realized in that moment, there's a God. He loves me, how I am, and that he did want me to stick around and be alive, and I didn't have to change myself because I wasn't going to be able to. He said, David, you need to stop asking me this because I'm not going to change this. You can see at this point, 30 years into your life, you've been praying about this for about over half your life. I'm not going to change this. And you need to understand why. I created you the way you are, and you need to understand why. So then that was odd, because I thought if God was there, if he was there and did acknowledge me, that he would take it away from me. I didn't think he would say, stop asking me this. So I was really taken off guard, I guess. But it gave me a lot of confidence. But then I'm like, but what about everything my church has told me about? Like, I don't act on this, gay relationships are bad and all, or wrong, I should say, they interfere with the eternal plan and eternal progression and all that. And I just learned God doesn't see it the same way a lot of people see it. Even a lot of Christians, a lot of religious people who mean well. I mean, I was a religious person who was meaning well, and clearly I didn't understand why I was this way. So it's very difficult now, because I've believed in what I've believed all my life. And I've learned through my own experiences, through my fights, my struggles, even when it's felt like hell, I need to accept this place of where I am now, and I may have to be open to what I wasn't open to before, including about myself. I was very afraid of myself. But it's just very difficult because I don't know what it means for me anymore with my beliefs, because I think I always looked at it as an all or nothing approach. Like, it's either all true or it's all not. You can't just pick the parts that you like. You can't just pick, that you like these family values and this, and certain aspects, but then you can't disagree with how you look on relationships and same-sex relationships, and what if I'm, I guess it's like there's a greater likelihood for me to marry a guy than a woman at this point, and that's the church. The church I've talked to the leaders to, and they said, well, maybe gay relationship's okay, but no marriage, because that would mean that you want unnatural ways of having sex, and that's not the way God wanted it. And I was like, that's interesting, because for me, marriage, I wasn't looking at marriage so that I can have sex. For me, I looked at marriage as wanting to share your life with someone you care about, and wanting to help them reach their goals and have them help you reach your goals and create goals together. Have a family however you are able to. Not everyone's able to have children, even if they're a heterosexual marriage. They have to find other ways to make a family work. And I was like, well, how come it's okay for people to adopt another kid from another, who's created by other parents? In our church, you can seal that child to you for a time in eternity, even though you didn't create that child. How does that work? And it's like, well, you still need a father and a mother. I'm like, what about single parents? How come we have compassion for single parents? Divorce. I mean, my parents got divorced. Like, how come we have compassion when other situations don't work the way we say God intended for them with marriage, but with people like in my situation, LGBT, it's so hard for us to have compassion for the exceptions that they may need to still make their life work in a similar way that the normal standard of heterosexual relationships works, or the way heterosexual relationships work. How come? Because I've literally tried everything I've known how. And I've had my identity always towards that. And then it's like, well, people are like, well, now you're choosing this over, you're choosing to be gay over God. It's like, no, I haven't left God. But for some reason, people in my community where I found God feel like I need to be pushed out now because of something that's hard for them to understand. And I don't think everyone's like that. I feel like a lot of people, and even in the church culture I grew up in, are very compassionate towards LGBT. I mean, more than I was. And maybe it's because I had so much despisement towards myself, because I'm like, well, I can work on this. I can change this about me. And, you know, being 30 years old and realizing that's not the case was really hard for me. Because I thought, it's not that it's wrong, it's that I'm wrong. And that I'm just bad. I'm just bad, and I guess there's nothing I can do about that. So thinking I would get to, but it's very difficult because, you know, I'm on a journey and have a lot of questions. There are things I don't have solid anymore. I felt were like solid before, and now they're just not, because my whole world's been all shook up. This is very long now, by the way. Anyway, with these shifts in my thinking, it's been very hard for me to keep just a one view fits all kind of thing, because I realize that doesn't apply correctly on every situation, like mine, being LGBT, QIA, being gay, being on the spectrum of that. And having that shift has caused me to feel like, what's my purpose now? Because it was always my beliefs before, you know, marriage, eternal marriage. And if I don't end up having that, and people are like, well, just don't get married, and after this life you'll find a spouse to be with forever. I'm like, I don't think that doesn't feel correct to me. Like, what if I want to be with a guy? Oh, well, then you're in trouble. Like, that's very difficult for me. From my own conversations with God, I've had to open up my mind. I've had to open up myself to be okay to those things. And it's very difficult, because I feel this tug of war of like, no, but this is how it's supposed to be. And it's like, well, are you open to look at it? You know, are you willing to have more compassion for you, David? Like, but no, this is what I've always been taught, and this is how it is. And I see even just some of the policies in my church, and just the conversation, how it's changed, even in the last few years. And I can't speak for for other denominations and religions, but it's very difficult. I'm just going to say that. And I feel like if I talk about this, people are gonna be like, oh, don't give in to your temptations. It's like, do you realize how difficult that was becoming, to have that kind of dialogue with myself? It became very dangerous to say, don't give in to this. It's like, that's not what God told me. God said, David, I want you to look at yourself and not judge yourself for this. I don't look at it the same way a lot of people do. A lot of Christians see this. That's very difficult for me, because I'm sure a lot of Christians and a lot of other people would say, like, that's wrong. That's a voice from the devil. It's like, this is the way God's always spoken to me. And it was with clarity, with peace. And I recognized this voice. And just because you don't understand it and don't agree with it does not mean it comes from the devil. I mean, that's what people said about Jesus. This is satanic. This is devilish. This can't be, because it was something they couldn't understand. It was different and new for them. And this is something that's being okay with this kind of sexuality, being attracted to other men, is different for me. It's difficult for me to grasp, but it brings me peace, and it gives me the confidence and assurance I need to keep moving forward. So if I end up with a guy, and if I marry a man, does that mean spirituality is out the door? No. I've met men who are married and are Christians who believe in God, but people then want to say they're hypocrites, and I hear people get so angry and on behalf of God, because they're defending his laws. And it's like, well, how come we pick and choose which things to get angry about, and then we'll turn a blind eye towards other things that are also considered sin? But I don't know, it's just, if they want to be faithful and to someone that they love, and they happen to be the same sex, and they want to serve, and they want to be kind, and they want to help other people, and they want to be in a committed relationship with someone they love, I think that is fair. And I feel like it's fair for me to want that and to pursue that as well. And even if people are upset about it, that's okay. I just don't want people to say, like, come back, you've left God. It's like, how do you know? Who said I ever left God? I mean, it's difficult. It's a very difficult, because when people tell you this is what God thinks, and they make him seem a lot more hateful and a lot more judgmental and a lot more like that he hates that you are living gay, which doesn't mean you're going around sleeping with everybody suddenly. When I say that, to live gay is simply what I said, like the same thing I was doing with women, dating them and courting them and going to movies and having lunch together and visiting family. Like that's the same thing, just with someone of the same sex. I don't understand why people have to sexualize homosexuality so much. I guess it can be, but because people have always told them it was so evil, and this is why you're so terrible and so evil and why you're going to hell. And so I think people feel like, fine, might as well. If you say I'm going there anyway, they exploit it. It's like, maybe it goes in an extreme other way. But I'm just saying a lot of things. 45 minutes now. That's okay. I guess this is more for me than anything else, I need to let it out. Because just again, when I did my career, like I lived my career and everything for my beliefs with another perspective, a greater perspective, eternal perspective in mind. And when it shifts and you feel like, well, what's going to happen now that I don't fit that picture anymore? I'm going to be knocked off. And what is going to be my purpose then? Because for 30 years, I lived it for this, and now what? You feel a loss of identity, a loss of meaning, because it was for my church always with this specific view. And I don't know what it means, if I don't marry a woman anymore in a temple. But at least I'm still here. And I don't know if I feel guilt for this is just kind of this is, I guess, the psychological warfare going on. To feel guilty, then like another sense of guilt that I'm accepting that about myself, but that I should feel ashamed for doing that. I don't feel like I'm a different person necessarily. It's just but this affects everything I do. It affects my relationships, not just romantic, like all relationships, friendships, family, everything. Romantic as well, of course. Affects my work. I haven't been able to write anything. I haven't felt inspired to write any new songs. I've tried. I don't feel any inspiration. Makes me very unmotivated. You lose your appetite. You lose your passion for everything that you usually were passionate about. So I'm just trying to figure it out. So that's why this tour, that's like the 48-minute long version of why I guess it's been hard for me to go into this tour, but I'm still going to do it. It's 2 years, put it off 2020 and put it off in 2021. Then a part of me is also like, if I didn't, would it be worse if I just were around here doing nothing? It's good to keep me occupied with something, so I'm not just here sitting in my thoughts all day long, unmotivated to do anything. I feel like that can make you spiral in another way. Just okay, all right, tour. This is from a therapy session, so maybe these songs will help me. As I listen to them and as I practice, it reminds me, it's almost like these messages are helpful for me right now. So maybe it will be helpful getting them out and maybe talking about them on tour. I feel like I have to talk about them. If I just sing songs and that's it, I will go crazy. I have to let out whatever's in my head. I'm going to find a therapist too. I've been looking. Anyway, that's it. Well, I love you all. Thank you for listening. Thanks for being with me, even when I have my life not figured out. And thanks for caring. I don't like to be like, oh, let me just dump my problems all on strangers and people, but I feel like if you've been listening this long, then you might, I guess, thank you for just being compassionate and just trying to listen and understand something I still don't fully understand. I'm in the process. I have a lot of questions with these conflicts between these core beliefs I've had all my life and now these new beliefs I'm gaining. And I feel like it's for the better. That's why I hope. And I just pray that God gives me grace, and I feel like He does. Maybe I just need to pray that I can continue to have experiences that allow me to have more grace with myself. And hopefully in the process, I can help other people find more grace for people like me in this kind of situation with sexuality. And if there's someone there, maybe that they can find more grace for themselves as well. Anyway, to be honest, I'm just going to chill today because I just need that. Have a nice weekend.